younger learners from U of T, half of the students interact with older adults outside of the class. So not only just in the class, but they would make time to make new friends and to interact with them outside of class. The class helped to address anxieties about getting older, not only for the younger folks, but also for the older folks who were in the classroom as well. There was a greater ease and comfort that people felt in talking and interacting with people of different ages.
Welcome to Elder Abuse Prevention Ontario's podcast, Aging Vibrantly, Conversations to Empower Seniors. I'm Raeann Rideout, the host of the show, where we amplify the voices of senior leaders and experts in the field of aging who impart their expertise and wisdom to enhance our understanding of aging issues and ways of living a safe and fulfilling life with respect and dignity. We live in a society that is increasingly separating individuals into age groups, which can lead to limited interaction and the potential for negative stereotypes and discrimination, particularly towards older adults. So how can we best address this to build connections and relationships between age groups and generations? In this episode of Aging Vibrantly, we explore a new and novel approach of an intergenerational classroom, which breaks down barriers between generations, offers a safe space to discuss the misunderstandings of aging, and allows students to explore aging from a viewpoint that considers the perspectives of both younger and older generations. We feature the University of Toronto's Intergenerational Classroom with Dr. Raza Mirza, professor and creator of the program, alongside with Florene Shuber, a senior participant of this course, who is also a resident of Christie Gardens, a retirement home and long-term care home where the course is hosted. You will be inspired from listening about the impacts of this program that it has had on enriching the lives of students, seniors, and teachers, as well as the relationships that have emerged through the intergenerational engagements, and most impressive of all, the transformational learning experienced by both students and seniors. But before we begin listening to the episode, I want to formally introduce our guests. Dr. Raza Mirza is the Director of National Partnerships and Knowledge Mobilization with Help Age Canada and Assistant Professor at University of Toronto's Factor and Wentesh Faculty of Social Work Institute for Life Course on Aging. His areas of expertise and teaching include medical decision-making, aging in place, and factors such as social isolation and loneliness influencing late life social, mental, and physical well-being. He was this year's recipient of the KNH Dr. Elizabeth Podnick's Award for Elder Rights in Canada, which he received at the National World Elder Abuse Awareness Day event in June. And most importantly, and why we have Raza with us today, is he's responsible for designing and instructing this university intergenerational classroom that is hosted at Christie Gardens residence in Toronto, Ontario. Alongside, we are going to be joined by Raza, a colleague and friend, and also a participant in the program, Florene Shuber. She is an advocate, a retired lawyer, teacher, educator, and was the principal of the Montessori Teachers College and Montessori Dementia Program. So today I'm also joined with my co-host, April Struthers, a member of our podcast Senior Advisory Committee. April, you've been very active in the community over the years, working in academic settings, educating students. Have you ever had the opportunity of participating in an intergenerational classroom?
Well, I've done some projects around women returning to the workforce, and it's women of all ages. So I've been in a classroom with a whole age span, and we were smart enough at that time to realize there was experience and assets that we could use as part of the program. So we informally did that. But I'm really excited to hear about more formal approaches where that's really brought into the forefront. The other thing I'm involved with right at this very minute is doing intergenerational programming with musicians who are working with going into older adult residences and helping with songwriting and various other things, and then also touring, but having a community and older adult connection to what they're doing, which has been very exciting.
Oh, that's interesting. the music thing would be part of my forte, but that's interesting that people are starting to expand. And I've done some teaching as well with university students, but really, and brought in guest speakers, but I really haven't had the opportunity to immerse into learning more about the intergenerational classroom. So I'm looking forward to our conversation today with our guests to get a better, deeper understanding of the value of the classroom learning experience and the transformational learnings and intergenerational connections that emerge for both seniors and for the students. So Raza and Florene, thank you both for joining us today. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about your backgrounds and how you, maybe how you met based on your backgrounds in teaching. And yeah.
Raza, would you like me to start on that?
No, I think you tell it better, but I'll just say it was serendipity. Yeah.
Excellent.
So I was the head of Montessori Teachers College, where we train Montessori teachers. And we have a course called Montessori for Dementia. And I needed a lecturer and couldn't find someone. And so a friend suggested I call the university, speak to one of the university professors. And just as I emailed asking them to find me someone, it turns out that Raza walked into that room and they started talking. Within minutes, we were connected. So it was just one of those lucky things that happened.
Yeah,
Wow,
it was really,
great.
I was going to say it was really lucky for me too. And I said, sure, let's do it. This sounds like something interesting and fun and something I haven't done before. And Florene was my boss at the time and has become a mentor and a friend. And we've been very closely connected since then. Since this is almost 10 years now. So yeah, that's how we met.
Wow.
And Raza is an outstanding lecturer, truly outstanding.
I have attended many of his presentations.
Yeah.
He's, yes. And I've actually, and when we get into talking about the intergenerational classroom, I attended one of the first year that you did it, one of the final sessions, and was very impressed with just watching the interaction between the students and the seniors and the learning and just the camaraderie that people were having. So, so let's maybe get a little bit more into it. I'll just turn it over to April.
So, Raza, I understand that in previous years in your teaching at the University of Toronto, you invited guest speakers like Florene to come to your class on aging and health, maybe once a semester to talk to undergraduate students for a few hours on the topic of aging. But this is something different that's evolved now. You've really switched up the course and the students' learning experience by expanding their knowledge on aging through this unique initiative that provides students with direct interactions with older adults at Christie Gardens, a retirement community and long-term care home, for a full semester. Now, we know that intergenerational learning is very impactful, but how did this concept of an intergenerational classroom evolve? And what does this type of learning environment look like for the students?
Yeah, I love this question. I can start off by saying that I had our colleagues and friends, as Raeann has mentioned, from Elder Abuse Prevention Ontario also join the class. For many of our students, this was the first time that they were even hearing about the concept of elder abuse. And so, friends of ours from Elder Abuse Prevention Ontario, who are one of the founding partners for this program as well, started to join our class. And I would say this was probably about, again, 7 or 8 years ago. And the whole point of it was to really put learning into context and say, what is it actually like to experience isolation or ageism? And, one of the questions that we ask at the beginning of the class is to the students is to say, at what age do you think someone is an older person? And they would say things like someone who's 35 and 40 and 55 and 60, and we wanted to challenge these ideas that they held. And, we'll talk about ageism a little bit later, but we wanted to really challenge these ideas. And again, like I said, to put learning into context. The other part about it, I think that's really important, is that the classroom is a community. And, within that community, we are all learners. And so the older adults who were joining our class to speak to the younger folks actually stayed for many of our classes. And they said, you know what? No one actually taught me about finances or medication or ways to address isolation. Do you mind if I stayed and came to your classes? And so over the years, the older adults would come and join the class and share their experiences, but would also really benefit from being in the class as well. And it was a really wonderful experience. In our program reviews and evaluations, we'd hear that that was one of the most exciting parts for the students as well, to engage with an older person. And so that's really been the sort of anchoring and the grounding of this, is this idea of creating context for learning and really creating the sense of community, and that we are all learners at any age.
Boy, community and reciprocity, it sounds like.
Yes, absolutely.
How did you get the connection with Christie Gardens?
Well, that's an interesting, again, serendipity is what I think. I was actually at a roundtable with the now Mayor Olivia Chow and the CEO of Christie Gardens, Heather Janes, and a question came up, and the question was, how can we better care for older people? And I responded to that question openly, and I said, well, we actually have to train the people who are caring for older people better. And a lot of the PSWs, the nurses, the pharmacists, social workers, physicians are actually not getting training in gerontology and geriatrics in the ways that they need to. So maybe that's the starting point. And once we can start to increase the training and the experiences that people are getting, then the care might improve as well. And, I'll talk about this idea about the need for personal connection. And that's where that conversation started. And I got a message from the CEO, Heather Janes, and she said, I feel like I've seen you around Christie Gardens, and I'd love to continue this conversation. And she was right. I had been at Christie Gardens quite a bit because I would go to meet Florene for lunch. And so that conversation first went to Florene to say, hey, here's what we're thinking, is this intergenerational classroom. And it started by Heather suggesting that we bring our students to Christie Gardens for one session, and that the older adults would join. And then when we actually sat down, I said, well, what if we just brought the students here every week for the whole semester, and we just taught the whole course here in this wonderful space that you have? And we actually enrolled the older adults from Christie Gardens in the course as well as learners. And that led to additional conversations at U of T and through the Office of Experiential Learning. And here we are, going into year 3 of the Intergenerational Classroom.
Yeah, it's fabulous. It's interesting how things just organically develop into a fabulous program that benefits, not only the current generation, but hopefully the future generation, as you talked about. And we'll get into later about, people working in that field of gerontology and geriatrics, et cetera. Yes. So, Florene, you've been involved as a resident in the program at Christie Gardens. What have you learned from engaging in conversations with seniors, your peers, as well as the students in the program?
Yes, well, from the students, what I discovered is that many of them are caregivers and they need lots of information, and we were able to provide that. What I especially liked about the whole program was the vitality of the young people, and watching the two generations come together was just breathtaking. I think as well that we have a lot to offer as older folks for the younger people, and I think we don't value that enough, but they value it when you're with them. So it was a wonderful experience. In fact, it was so wonderful. I went for 2 years in a row.
It's interesting, though, when you were saying about the younger students being caregivers at a young age. We just recorded a session on caregiving. So, and talking about the age of caregivers and when people start getting in that role and not being prepared or understanding what that looks like. So that's an interesting learning, I would suspect, for the students that were in that program, having a better understanding. And I know some of the course and materials that you're talking about. So, that's an interesting insight.
So have you found that the perspectives of youth and older adults are very different when you discuss issues? And is there an openness to appreciate the generational views of each other?
There's an amazing openness, but also I didn't find the views so different once we started to talk. And I also wanted to say, I have a granddaughter who's 28, and we've discussed this course with her. And she said that she finds the older folks so helpful in that young people get lost in the weeds, is the way she explained it, and they can't find their way out. And we have that long-term vision that they just can't have. And so it's very helpful for us to talk to them about it. And I found, as I say, there were far less differences than there were things that we could agree on.
Wow. So that harks back to Raza's comment on the commonalities, where initially younger students might say that we don't have anything in common, but what you're saying is that, yeah, we do.
Once you start to talk, you realize you have a lot in common. And I found them incredibly respectful and open to listening. I was quite surprised, actually. We get the impression that young people are restless and can't sit and listen to us, but they can. And I need to add one thing to that. At Christie Gardens, we have an incredible group of very intelligent people. We have a lot of retired professors from the university. And so the quality of the conversation is really high. And I think that's what also captivated these young people. And the knowledge is great.
Well, it's interesting to the benefits that you've talked about. And, also I would suspect that, people are engaged, as you just talked about, of being with each other, and that decreases, I would think one of the benefits was around decreasing that isolation and learning experiences so they can live safer and healthier sort of lives. So, and one of the concepts I was saying, there is a lot of commonalities, which is interesting, because I think what we see or hear a lot of times is that we, the younger and older are so far apart and they don't understand each other. And, but you saying that there's commonalities, and once we have that opportunity to talk to each other, and that's, I think, part of the problem, I think, for us, is that people just don't take the time to spend time together to understand each other in a ways that, dispel these kind of myths and ideas and attitudes that we have around aging.
One of the simple things about this course was we would arrive 30 minutes earlier and there would be lots of coffee and goodies. And we would sit and chat with the young people, and there were questions that we had prepared to talk about. And it warmed us all up. So once the lecture started, we were all warm and cozy and happy together and ready to listen.
So, Raza, did the program break down the barriers of ageism and alert students to sort of the biases about the older generation?
Well, I want to just comment on this idea that Florene is raising about commonality, because I think it's important for us to focus on commonality, but we also focus on the fact that there are differences and that the differences are welcome and that they're respected. And having the differences in that classroom context is really important, because sometimes we operate in our own age bubbles, so you operate in a group that's similar in your age because, well, you met them at work, or you met them in school, and the people that are outside of your peer group are potentially your family members. And so this breaks, your age bubble a little bit, but having a difference of opinion actually increases ideological diversity, not only within the classroom, but also for people to think about things. And so that is one of the ways that we start to address ageism. Because ageism is rooted in differences, but again, talking about it in a way that's prejudicial, it is stereotypical, and it's seen as something that's problematic. And so when we can address that ageism, I think it's really, really important in the class context. Now, again, as I had mentioned, that we ask a couple of these difficult questions to get the baseline. What age is a person, an older person? Do you interact with older folks or younger folks? And most of the time, the answer is, well, no. Why would I interact with an older person or a younger person? I'm not sure we have that much in common. And what people learn is that you actually do have a lot in common. And the differences that you have actually are important for you to see an alternative viewpoint. A couple other points here, just about some of the work that we've done with the Canadian Coalition Against Ageism, and Elder Abuse Prevention Ontario is an important partner with that as well. And, ageist views start to develop at the ages of between 7 and 9 is what we're finding. When we ask people about ageism, 55% of those who were surveyed recently would say, well, yeah, I have an understanding of what ageism is. But 87% of folks will say, I'm not sure what it actually looks like or how to describe it or what the prevalence of ageism is. And so these things are things that we're trying to unpack and get people to learn and unlearn in the classroom context. And I would say that the classroom allows us to really, in a safe environment, talk about the ways that we are intentionally and unintentionally ageist. And one of the ways that we're often unintentionally ageist is towards ourselves. And this self-ageism or this internalized ageism is something that's really comes to light in the classroom. And part of this is, well, in the university classroom, if you're over the age of 25, you're considered a mature student. You're given the label of non-traditional student. If you are a retired professor, you are given the label of professor emeritus. And so this is another way of othering that leads to ageism and to students questioning things and asking me, I'm 27. Do you think I'm too old to be in this class? I'm 31. I'm coming back to school. Am I too old? And this class is really trying to rewrite that narrative and saying, you're never too old to learn something and to be in this classroom context.
Well, that's interesting. And I think it would also provide an opportunity for those who don't have, aging grandparents that are close or have that ability to have a relationship or don't have grandparents at all. I know, my children have one grandmother, but we don't have many, and in our family. So having those interactions and experiences, ability to connect and have a conversation, and it creates, as you said, I think, Raza, that safe space, I think, is really important as well. No one's going to judge me for asking a question that I really want to know more about as well. I think is probably very helpful for breaking down some of those barriers and talking about what those commonalities are. Because I think when we think about ageism, we don't really talk about the commonalities a lot. We talk about the negative, but these opportunities that we do have a lot in common as we're getting older.
What I'm hearing is that this program bursts the age bubble, and also the echo chamber that you might have in terms of what you take in from the outside world and how you amplify or don't amplify that. There's also what you've described, Raza, though, as transformative things that happen for the students, for the residents of Christie Gardens, and for teachers. Can you tell us more about the intergenerational learning process as transformation and the outcomes that you think have been maybe unexpected and have happened because of this program?
Yeah, and I use the word transformative, and it sounds dramatic, but actually is. The change in 12 weeks, and we really get about 24 to 36 hours in the classroom with all of these folks. I do think it is transformative, and I think part of this is, again, as you mentioned, oftentimes we are in these echo chambers and we're hearing the same thing from our own peer group and others, and this gives you a bit of an alternative viewpoint and a different lens on things. And what the classroom does is it's facilitating and creating a new environment for learning that is unlike the traditional classroom experience. And so this experiential piece where you're actually learning in the homes of the folks that are in the class with you, I think that's part of the transformation. But I think that what also folks face is this disorienting dilemma. And that's the way I can best say it to you, is that older adults too, and the younger folks come in with their own ideas, and then they hear someone who's the age of 99 bring out their guitar and start playing. And then you hear about this 19-year-old who's actually doing advocacy for climate change. And this disorienting dilemma that, again, challenges our ageist views is what leads to the transformation. And what it does is forces us to be really reflective of the thing that we're thinking about and why we're thinking about them. I think so that's really important. And some of the things that I'll share with you, and we did a full research and evaluation on this class, and we have a 3-part paper series coming out this summer around the process of setting up the class, some of the learnings for the older adults and for the younger learners from U of T. Half of the students will interact with older adults outside of the class. So not only just in the class, but they would make time to make new friends and to interact with them outside of class. The class helped to address anxieties about getting older, not only for the younger folks, but also for the older folks who were in the classroom as well. There was a greater ease and comfort that people felt in talking and interacting with people of different ages. And, and that was one of the ones that surprised me, that there actually existed this ease, this discomfort of talking to people with of different ages. And again, it goes back to this idea that we have in our mind that we don't have a lot in common with folks and we don't know what to talk to them about. And it was just so easy for people in the class. And I would look into the class when they would all be sitting and having the muffins and coffee, and people would just organically be talking. And then I'll share this other point here, that 100% of folks in this class began to recognize and reconsider their own ageist views. And also suggested that they had greater empathy, not only older people for younger people, saying, wow, this younger cohort is dealing with a lot that we didn't deal with. And the younger cohort saying, wow, this older cohort is dealing with a lot that we didn't have to. And, I can tell you that we try to connect theory with practice, and we try to really facilitate not only academic development, but professional development and personal development. And I have so many stories and cards and things from people that I could share with you about them. And if you'd like, I can share one of them with you.
Yes, that would be great.
Okay, actually, you know what? Sorry, I'm going to share 2. There's 2 good ones. I'll be very quick about it, okay? So there's one where I learned about this much later. I didn't even know that this had happened, but a Christie resident had an illness and they were unable to take care of their cat. And they reached out to one of the students who they had befriended and said, look, this thing has happened to me. Would you be able to take care of my cat? Because I'm having a real hard time. And for 2 weeks, this younger student from U of T helped to take care of the cat. And, while this person was recovering, this was their greatest concern. And, they became really, really good friends. And I saw them again in year 2. So this was one of the students from the year 1, and they came back into year 2 and they were good friends. And then the other one that I'll say is that one of our students who was with us for 2 years actually has been participating in a Dancing with Parkinson's class and sees people like Florene and others outside of class. And they have this really sort of intergenerationally diverse group of friends that they formed. And that is probably 2 of 5 to 10 stories that I can tell you off the top of my mind. But I'm telling you, the thing that I saw that really just warms my heart more than anything is these friendships, these real authentic friendships and connections that developed.
I think that's so important. And especially like the empathy that you were talking about and that long-term relationship, because we don't get that same experience when, you do the education or you invite someone in for one class and they get just a snippet. But having that whole full semester, they really have that opportunity to get to know people, and they probably show up early, I would suspect, right? Or stay after class. And, and it's, not to minimize that, I think that story about looking after someone's cat is remarkable because that shows that they trust, right? They've trust that person, that relationship, that, and we know what pets, I have pets as well. And you don't just pass those over to anyone to take care of them. So, I can see the real value and how that really has transformed people. And hopefully that they talk to their friends about, going out in the community, and when they see things that aren't right and people aren't treating other people with respect and dignity, that they step up and say I'm sure that there's so many ripple effects from this program, from those students, as the time goes on, in that program. And I know for all of us that are here on this interview today, we've studied or worked in the field for many years. And in fact, we probably don't want to count all the years between all of us. But the field of gerontology and geriatrics, it really is a small sector of that workforce, right? Compared to other professions like, lawyers, for instance. So it's surprising, given our current aging population, almost 10 years ago, we had more seniors. And I know that right now we have more seniors in Ontario than we do younger generation, the younger people. And we're knowing that's going to increase, right? 75 plus age group is going to more than double in 20 years, a 68% increase. So my question is, why are we going to see a shortage of professionals with the expertise and knowledge of aging, to care and work with seniors in the future? And will this program sort of help bridge that gap in terms of getting people engaged in working in the field of aging?
Florene, would you like to go first?
Well, I think that what's happened is younger people have only seen us as disabled and going downward. What they don't see is the vibrancy that can happen as you get older. And there's so much more that you can do as you get older. And I think they need to see that excitement even for themselves. I can do things physically now because I train, that I'm 91 years old, and I can do things that I could not do at age 50. And I see myself becoming more vibrant, having more fun, doing more for society. I feel myself improving all the time. And that's been a great shock to me, because we all think of decline as we get older, but that doesn't have to be that way. And so young people have to see that for themselves if they're going to go into this profession.
Oh, thanks, Florene. And I appreciate that insight. And I would hope that people get that understand, like what you were just saying, and want to pursue that you're giving that different image, that it's not all negative, right? And I think that's the media portrays all that. I mean, so, and Raza, what would you say with regards to that?
Well, I'm going to say that again, we need to start getting people who are interested in health and social care to think about careers in aging much sooner. And I think an intergenerational curriculum younger in high school years, when people are starting to set their path forward, is probably something that's important. So when you're thinking about going to law school or medicine, pharmacy, social work, whatever it is, that maybe there is a civics class that happens in high school that introduces you to careers in aging. That's one of the things I will tell you that even in the university setting, this is one of the only undergraduate classes that focuses on aging. And if I add the dementia lens to it, that people need to be trained in dementia so that they can work in long-term care or in home care, the limited number of opportunities for education and training is a huge bottleneck. And that bottleneck is actually leading to the wait lists and other things that you see. You can create as many beds as you want. You can create as much opportunity and say that you'll up the hours to 4 hours or whatever. If you don't have the people to provide that care, that's going to be a problem. And I'll say this, that we aren't looking forward towards a health human resources shortage in gerontology and geriatrics. We've had one for 10, 15 years now, and that this is, again, an issue of policy legacy and cuts that we saw back in the 1990s. But I think a reframing of this and saying, okay, we still have a really good opportunity here. And you're seeing folks like Christie Gardens and the University of Toronto really taking a focus on this. And in the future, I think Christie Gardens is going to be a leader in training other healthcare professionals as well. One other thing that I will tell you is that the people that are in gerontology and geriatrics, they do face things like burnout. And we saw that really happen in the pandemic. And so this, again, seeing the burnout, seeing some of the negative framing, some of the negative stories that are coming out in the care of older adults, it actually acts as a deterrent and discourages people from going to gerontology and geriatrics. And last thing I'll say is that my class sizes remained fairly similar in the last 15 years or so. So I haven't seen a big increase in the number of students that are actually coming into gerontology and geriatrics. And so maybe it's a marketing issue, a framing issue, or some approach that we have to take earlier on.
Yeah, I agree. And trying to bridge that gap, because as you say, the burnout, we are a small sector, and I say we because we're working in that field of aging. And we really do. When we go to conferences, we all, there's the same people that we've been working with, and we need to, start at the younger generation to get them immersed. So in wanting to go into this field, there's so much reward, as I think Florene, you were talking about. There's I think the internal rewards of feeling that you're helping and you're making a big difference in terms of the aging population, making sure that we're there to support and understand. And as informal caregivers and as formal caregivers, I think it goes both ways in terms of, and you had mentioned that earlier, Florene, about younger people already being in the world of and being informal caregivers. So having this education can further, prepare them. And I attended one of at that last class that we talked about, and you were talking about, Raza, about the financial, how much money do you need to retire? I was shocked myself. I'm like, am I prepared? Because we don't really put it on when you put it on a slide and you say, this is what the reality is now and how people are prepared for the future. But it's just that understanding of what we need for not only for ourselves, but also, the healthcare needs and expenditures, and looking after being able to live a healthy lifestyle as we get older, and being able to afford the things that we want to, or just getting by. I mean, there's so many things that we have to understand. So this really creates that great framework, I think, for moving forward. April, you wanted to say something?
Yeah. I'm getting the message about reframing in every way, and that's not just reframing the negative ageism influences that we have, but reframing our thinking and dealing with the bottlenecks that exist, and we know very well what they are, and you've talked about some of them, Raza, and the whole thing about thinking younger, as well as thinking about provision for aging. And making it a two-way street always, so that the early messaging to 7 to 11-year-olds and the use of the resources that we have, and the encouraging folks to know more about all the different fields to get into as they're making those decisions. But I'm just wondering now about this particular program, and is this program hoping to expand to provide other older adults and students in the Toronto area, or even beyond, the opportunity to participate in this intergenerational learning classroom experience in the future? And I guess that's directed at Raza, first of all, and then
Sure.
Florene.
I can tell you that, we've been really blessed to have many guests come to our class, and sometimes we've had a capacity issues to the point where we've had to open up the larger classroom at Christie Gardens. Raeann, when you were there, that was the larger classroom because we had over 75 people who wanted to join as guests. And so there is an interest there. There is interest from other universities and colleges that are going to be pushing forward with their own version of an intergenerational classroom. So at Trent University, older adults do come, and this is Dr. Elizabeth Russell, the students do come to the class, older adults from the community do come to the university, to the class itself. And I know that other folks are interested as well. And what that again is highlighting to us is that there is a desire to have these conversations. And part of this is to say, we want to look at this classroom as just a little microcosm of what needs to happen in society. And we need to take these conversations and expand them and bring them into the community so that more and more of us can have these interactions and these conversations. And again, hopefully this leads to people saying, well, I'd like to consider a career in aging. And part of this work also is to build personal connections that people can relate to and say, there was this time that I took care of this person's cat, and that inspired me to pursue a career in aging because I recognize that is sometimes these simple things that are a big issue when a person is unwell, etc. So I think that personal connection piece is important. And again, taking the conversation outside of the classroom, that this is a starting point. And what we hear from our learners, whether they're older people or they're the younger folks, is that many of the things that we discuss in class gets back to the kitchen table, like Florene's telling you, with, the conversations with the grandchildren. So the more folks that can be part of this work, if we can create an intergenerational classroom network across this country, we'd be so thrilled,
Wow.
and we're really trying to formalize this approach in a way that anyone could take our learning materials, our evaluation materials, and take it and teach it and learn in this way. And more than anything, there's a social element to it that is really attractive to not only there's a social element that's not only really attractive to the older folks, but also to the younger folks. And my most sort of transformative early learning was that I made an assumption that most of the folks at Christie Gardens knew each other. And I was really focused on facilitating interactions and friendships between the younger folks. But actually, the classroom became this environment where people who were just new to Christie Gardens or had been at Christie Gardens for a long time became better friends or became better engaged with one another. And so, again, what's the benefit of this classroom? Are people interested in it? Yes, they're interested in the learning aspect, but there's that community and that engagement part of it that's really, really key for addressing things like ageism, lack of intergenerational engagement, and for the isolation and loneliness that many of us feel.
Yeah. Florene, do you have any comments?
Yes, and not necessarily about taking this forward because that's not my field, but
Right.
since COVID, I've been really aware of the fact that all organizations talk about care and they don't talk about what's possible. And I think that we have to change that whole attitude and spend more time talking about what you can do as opposed to what you can't do. And until we do that, I don't see any success going forward. And they have to stop talking about us as just degrading or like falling apart. We are not falling apart. We're doing very well, thank you. And nobody knows that.
Yeah.
So let's get the word out.
Yeah, that's, like I say, it's switching that conversation or, doing the 360 of creating the messaging that you were just saying, Florene, about the positive aspects of aging and as opposed to the negative,
If I could
portrayals that we see most often in the media and otherwise.
If I could just add one more thing, I think we have to read
Sure.
more. And I mentioned to you earlier about I read books about growing older, and my favorite is called Growing Bolder by Mark, his last name, Mark Middleton. And I think we all have to read those kind of books because there's a wonderful world out there for us as we get older. And that would be my message. And I think that's what Raza is trying to tell us as well. And I think young people need to know that and that they have a terrific future coming up, not a decline.
Yes. I do have a quick slide just to show people some of the books that you have read. And I think that's the one right there at the bottom about Growing Bolder by Mark Middleton. And I know that I've seen a few of these, read The Successful Aging. So the great, ideas of, so many books out there on aging that we can all start, thinking about and talking about. And we did a previous episode. Our first launch of our episode of Aging Vibrantly was on ageism, and just to start that conversation. So some of the things that you brought up as well, Raza, that reiterated that the fact around othering, and so much of that we've talked about today was talked about in that previous episode as well. So lastly, we have one final question that we ask all of our guests as we wrap up, because we're so intrigued by the expansion of this program, and we're talking about vibrancy. I think came up in our conversation a few times. So maybe we'll start with Florene. So what advice, and you've talked a little bit about this just in terms of reading, but what advice would you give to other seniors to age vibrantly?
They first have to realize that it's possible to change and to become vibrant. Then they have to find a role model somewhere that they can see that what these people do. And then I suggest they start to read books and then push themselves forward. It all comes from ourselves, and we have to do it if we want to have a good life. And it's possible. I think that's the thing that they need to know. It's possible.
Yeah. Thank you. Raza, any comments, or what's your advice?
Yeah, when I saw the sort of tagline of aging vibrantly and the word vibrant, I think about the most vibrant season, which is, for me, it's autumn. I love the autumn. I love fall. I love the fall colors. And sometimes older age is referred to as the autumn of a person's life. And, I thought about it and I said, well, how beautiful that's the time where the leaves are really showing their true colors. There's a bit of a stillness that's in the air. And there's this hope and positivity for the seasons to come. And I think that's the message that I'll give to folks, is that there is a lot more to life to live. I'll echo something that Florene tells me all the time: make sure you exercise. And if you haven't started to exercise in your younger years, there's, an opportunity to do so when you're an older person. And I think the most important thing that I'll be able to say about this is to say, go back to school, take a course and learn something new, and maybe come to our class or take a class with a friend. And perhaps it's something that you've wanted to do for a long time, and you're thinking to yourself, oh, I'm too old to go back to class, and maybe I'll be the oldest person in the class. And what I'd like to, again, end off by saying is to say what a real joy and benefit it would be to the other learners to have that older person in the class with their perspective, their experience, and their maturity to be able to share with them. And that opportunity for exchange within that classroom is something that, again, is unmatched in many of the other things that we can do. So again, I encourage people to learn something new.
So I'm 91, as I told you, and at 82, I started to fall. And I had to do something about this. So I joined a gym, and I got a private trainer. So I've been with him now 9 years. And he tells me that at age 91, I can do things that his 50-year-old clients cannot do. So there is hope. That's the message I really want to tell you. We can get better. We don't have to get worse.
Yeah. Wow, how inspiring. That's amazing. I keep looking at my gym downstairs as I look at it right ahead of me. I'm going, maybe I should get back out there. I keep procrastinating, but that is so, the exercise and it just creates your different frame of mind, and that there are goals that you can set for yourself, and as to age healthier and more vibrant. And so I want to thank both of you for being so inspiring and leading the change for learning and intergenerational opportunities. And we did have as you mentioned, the intergenerational learning to get back in learning. We did have a podcast. We had Olive Bryant, that I'm sure you're also very familiar with, as well as a friend. And she spoke about her experiences of going back to actually be a student and completing her PhD. So the opportunities are endless for individuals. So we encourage our listeners to take these opportunities to go back, learn more about the intergenerational classroom, if the program is expanding within your area, to join one of these classrooms. And we'll have information in our show notes about the links to the program and other programs that are evolving. I live within that area of Trent University, so I'll be looking that up, because I have seen some correspondence around that as well. So thank you for everything that you're doing and continue to do, and expanding the work. And hopefully we get the opportunity to attend some of your sessions as well. And we'll spread the news for other people to get engaged in the lifelong learning and education component. And I'll be passing this information on to my family members as well. Do you have any
Thank you for your
comments or
continued
last
support.
comments?
Well, I just
Yes.
wanted to say thank you for your continued support and, the leadership of Elder Abuse Prevention Ontario in recognizing that, one of the ways to address ageism, things like elder abuse, neglect, and mistreatment is to increase the frequency of interactions between younger folks and older folks. And Elder Abuse Prevention Ontario has always been at the forefront of things that are innovative. And I never heard no from Raeann or from Marta ever at any time I've brought up ideas. And I really appreciate that. So thank you so much.
No, thank you. Thank you again, Raza and Florene, for turning your vision into a reality. Your leadership for providing space for intergenerational dialogue and learning is addressing ageism, is opening the door for students to pursue careers in the field of aging, and creating lifelong intergenerational friendships. I challenge our listeners to learn more about intergenerational opportunities in their area, or to connect with our guests if you too would like to develop or participate in an intergenerational classroom. To find more information about intergenerational classrooms and links to resources mentioned in today's episode, please view our show notes. We encourage you to also visit Elder Abuse Prevention Ontario's website at eapon.ca. Aging Vibrantly, Conversations to Empower Seniors is hosted by Raeann Rideout, produced by Lisa Whitfield, and edited by Todd Miller of Podcast Experts. The original music is by Red Path Audio. We want to thank Help Age Canada for their financial support to produce this season's podcast. Please rate, review, and subscribe to Aging Vibrantly wherever you get your podcast. If you're on Apple Podcasts, give us a great rating and review. If you prefer to watch our interviews, full episodes are available on Elder Abuse Prevention Ontario's YouTube channel. Be sure to check us out. Until next time, stay vibrant.